In the intricate dance of international relations, language is not merely a tool of communication, it's a strategic weapon. This is particularly true in the complex relationship between the United States and China, where every carefully chosen word and phrase carries significant weight. The nuances of diplomatic language can reveal underlying intentions, signal potential shifts in policy, and even escalate or de-escalate tensions. Misinterpretations or deliberate miscalculations in this arena can have far-reaching consequences. The trade war that erupted during the Trump administration provides a compelling case study in the importance of diplomatic language. This period witnessed a dramatic departure from traditional diplomatic norms, with both sides increasingly resorting to blunt confrontational rhetoric. Analyzing the evolution of language used by both countries, particularly China, offers valuable insights into the strategies at play and their implications for the future of this critical bilateral relationship. Understanding the subtle shifts in language, the escalation of rhetoric, and the calculated use of certain terms is essential in deciphering the true dynamics between the US and China. By carefully examining the language used during this tumultuous period, we can gain a deeper understanding of the motivations, anxieties, and long-term goals driving both superpowers on the global stage. The initial salvos in the US-China trade war were met with a calculated response from Beijing. When the Trump administration imposed a 10% tariff on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods in March 2018, China's initial reaction was one of measured discontent. Chinese officials expressed deep regret and serious concern over the US decision, emphasizing the potential harm to global trade and the multilateral trading system. This carefully calibrated response reflected China's desire to avoid an all-out trade war, while simultaneously signaling its displeasure with the US actions. The language employed, while critical, maintained a veneer of diplomacy, emphasizing dialogue and negotiation as the preferred path forward. Beijing's choice of words at this juncture suggests an attempt to downplay the significance of the initial tariffs, portraying them as a temporary obstacle that could be overcome through further discussions. However, beneath the surface of diplomatic niceties lay a steely resolve. China made it clear that it would not passively accept what it perceived as unfair and protectionist measures. The stage was set for a protracted economic confrontation, with language becoming a key battleground in the unfolding trade war. As the trade war escalated, so too did the rhetoric emanating from Beijing. When the US threatened to impose additional tariffs on Chinese goods, China's language shifted from measured discontent to outright defiance. The phrase "firmly opposed" became a common refrain in official statements, signaling a hardening of China's stance. This shift in language reflected China's growing frustration with the Trump administration's aggressive trade tactics. Beijing recognized that the US was deliberately targeting China's economic rise and was determined to push back against what it perceived as an attempt to contain its growth. The use of stronger language was intended to convey a clear message. China would not be bullied or intimidated, and it was prepared to weather the storm of a trade war. This period also saw a noticeable increase in China's use of nationalist rhetoric. State-run media outlets began to portray the trade war as a struggle between two systems, with China representing the forces of free trade and globalization against the protectionist impulses of the United States. This narrative resonated with the Chinese public, bolstering domestic support for the government's tough stance. Section 4, Economic Terrorism, China breaks with diplomatic norms. The trade war reached a boiling point in 2019 when the Trump administration labeled China a currency manipulator. This highly provocative move, unprecedented in recent history, further inflamed tensions and led to a dramatic escalation in China's rhetoric. For the first time, Chinese officials accused the US of engaging in economic terrorism and naked economic hegemony. This marked a significant departure from China's traditionally restrained diplomatic language. By resorting to such harsh and inflammatory language, Beijing was signaling its willingness to abandon diplomatic niceties and engage in a war of words. The use of terms like economic terrorism was carefully calculated to resonate with a global audience, portraying the US as a rogue actor willing to destabilize the global economy for its own narrow interests. China's decision to break with diplomatic norms reflected a growing sense of confidence in its ability to withstand US pressure. It also signaled a strategic shift in China's approach to the US, moving away from a policy of accommodation and towards a more assertive posture on the world stage. Section 5, a calculated counterstrike, China's economic retaliation. China's rhetorical offensive was accompanied by concrete actions. Beijing responded to U.S. tariffs with retaliatory tariffs of its own, targeting key American exports like soybeans and automobiles. These countermeasures were designed to inflict economic pain on U.S. industries and pressure the Trump administration to back down from its aggressive trade policies. Beyond tariffs, China also began to leverage its economic clout in other ways. Beijing slowed down approvals for U.S. companies seeking to do business in China, and hinted at the possibility of restricting access to its vast market of 1.4 billion consumers. These actions demonstrated that China was willing to use its economic might as a tool of leverage in its dealings with the United States. China's calculated use of economic retaliation sent a clear message. It would not be a passive victim in a trade war. Beijing was prepared to absorb some short-term pain in order to defend its long-term economic interests. This assertive response, backed by concrete actions, marked a new chapter in U.S.-China relations. Section 6. Beyond Trade. The case of TikTok and technological control. The trade war also spilled over into the realm of technology, highlighting the growing competition between the U.S. and China for global technological dominance. The Trump administration's attempts to ban the popular social media app TikTok, owned by Chinese company ByteDance, exemplified this trend. The U.S. government argued that TikTok posed a national security threat, alleging that the app could be used by the Chinese government to collect data on American citizens. While TikTok vehemently denied these allegations, the case underscored the growing suspicion and distrust between the two countries in the technological sphere. China viewed the U.S. actions against TikTok as a blatant attempt to stifle its technological advancement. The case highlighted the increasing tendency of the U.S. to use national security concerns as a pretext for protectionist measures aimed at containing China's rise as a technological power. Section 7. Projecting Strength. China's Global Chessboard. Throughout the trade war, China sought to project an image of strength and resilience on the global stage. Beijing emphasized its commitment to free trade and globalization, positioning itself as a responsible stakeholder in the international system. China also sought to strengthen its ties with other countries, particularly in Europe and Asia, as a way of counterbalancing U.S. influence. China's use of its sovereign wealth fund to stabilize markets during the trade war was a prime example of this strategy. By injecting billions of dollars into struggling economies, China aimed to demonstrate its commitment to global economic stability and position itself as a reliable partner for countries seeking to reduce their dependence on the United States. China's actions during this period were part of a broader strategy to reshape the global order in its favor. The trade war, while undoubtedly a challenge, also presented China with an opportunity to advance its own interests and promote its vision of a multipolar world order.